Good afternoon, everyone. Let me know the screen is visible and I'm audible.
Good afternoon, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir, it is visible and you are audible, sir.
Thank you. So today we'll look at primarily the two features that very determine how does TCP handles error control, which basically relate to flow control and congestion control. And quite often, a lot of people use them interchangeably. The two are completely different things, happens at different places. And why people get confused is because treatment happens to be the same. And just because treatment happens to be the same does not mean the regions are different. It's something like you have a body pain, you take paracetamol, you have a fever, you take paracetamol. Two diseases are different, treatment may be the same, but that does not imply fever is same as your body pain. So we look at flow control and look at congestion control, the way TCP handles. So primarily, if you look at the way it works, you have the IP network stack. From the sender, data would come to the IP layer. IP layer will remove the IP header part of it and then give to the TCP. TCP would keep the data into the buffer. And if application is not ready to receive the data, it will keep writing into its own buffer. And if application is not reading it, the buffer at some point in time would become full. And buffer becomes full, it won't be able to receive any more data. And if any data comes, it will be discarded and wasted the bandwidth. So that means my receiver should keep updating sender constantly what is the buffer available now. And sender should send only that much data. And when application reads the data, buffer could become partially free and it can update what is the buffer has happened and what is the current buffer. So controlling the sender that how much sender can send. So controlling of the sender by the receiver, this is important. So flow control is not controlled by the sender. Flow control is under the control of receiver who is controlling the sender, telling the sender this is how much data you can send, not at your will. This is my buffer available. Here you can send only this much. So if receiver controls the sender about the data it can send, that is basically called flow control. And you can, in a way, you can look at the speed matching service because that means sender can send only that much data which receiver can consume. Or by going our food analogy, you can serve at the rate only that much food to the guest, only at the rate at which guest can eat, not beyond that. Otherwise, it will overflow on the plate and there's no place there. So in that sense, you can say flow control is speed matching service, and flow control happens end to end between sender and receiver. Underlying network has no role in the play. And how does receiver inform the sender? There is a field called receive window. It fills the value receive window at the time of connection setup. This value is filled, and each time it gives an act, it updates the value depending on how much the receive window is. So for example, if you allocated 10 kilobyte of receive window size and client is sending 1000 byte, but application is not reading, then you'll see first time receive window would be 10 kilobyte, then 9 kilobyte, 8 kilobyte, and so on and so forth. And when application reads it, it will get updated. So receive window field gets updated when either applications read the data or the sender sends the data. And that is what we control the sender, how much it can basically send. Flow control is quite different or distinct from congestion control. Congestion control is when error occurs in the network. That we're going to study in a short while. That basically happens if my routers, intermediate routers are out of buffers, are too slow to process, and sender times out, and that means network is not able to handle the traffic. So going by the analogy, let's say You are ordering food in the canteen and serving, but there is too much people in the canteen, and so server can't even serve the food because it takes a lot of time to find a way. That would be congestion control. Flow control is end-to-end between sender and receiver. Congestion control is within the network when network cannot handle the traffic sent by the sender, so sender has to slow down. In either case, whether it's the flow control issue or congestion control issue, the only thing sender does is slow down, or what we call is throttle the sender. Just because the action is the same by the sender, it does not mean that two things or two events or two incidents are same, they are different. In flow control, we typically assume that receiver, because it doesn't have buffer space, so if it gets out of order segments, which is out of buffer space, it will simply discard them. Within the buffer, it may even keep them. So that is how this receiver would work. And receiver maintains informs are called RWND window size. And then when this is communicated, sender keeps a copy and knows what is the current RWND which sender has got. RWND is the field name called receive window size. When sender communicates its receive buffer, when receiver communicates its available receive buffer, sender maintains that value in a variable called RWND, receive window size, and make sure that the window it is sending data or the sliding window size cannot be more than the value of RWND. So you can understand and look at the way it works. Assuming initially this was the entire buffer with the receiver, and as and when it gets the data, it will keep writing data into the buffer from starting from this to the bottom. And when application needs the data, this buffer data would become free and RWND would increase. If only getting a data from the sender and application not reading it, then buffer data would increase and space of free buffer space, which represents RWND, would shrink. So every time sender communicates and receiver receives the data, its RWND would basically shrink because it will put into the buffer and it will shrink. And only when application reads the data, then it would increase. But respond to sender happens only when sender sends a message and not when application consumes. There may be cases there where RWND becomes 0 and receiver never informs sender that my buffer has become free. So we look at those cases as well. What is the receive buffer size? When you create a socket, which is API, but there you can specify what is the receive buffer size. Default is 4 kilobytes, but you can make it more, less. And in fact, most of the OS today, they allocate receive buffer in terms of megabyte and even larger by default. And even dynamically, if they are in a buffer, they see client is sending too much data, their dynamic basis even increase or decrease the receive window size, or what is called the entire receive buffer window. So initially, when connection setup happens, receiver indicates the entire value as the receive buffer size. As and when receive data, it will indicate remaining free buffer space as the receive window size. So each message you communicate, if you look at words are captured, each message contains what is the receive buffer size, which sender would keep as receive window. So sender has to make sure that it never sends data more than the RWND value. Because if it sends more, receiver has no place, data has to be discarded, and sender would end up sending it all over again. And that would be complete wastage of the network bandwidth. So how does this implement it? So basically, you can look at receiver maintains two variables called last byte read and last byte receive along with the buffer size. So you can look at as a basically it's a buffer array. This is the last, this point is last byte read, this point is last byte receive, and whole thing is the buffer. So this becomes my receive window size, and that is what communicates. So difference of last byte received minus last byte read by the application, this indicates the data in the buffer, which is occupied. And this is always going to be less than receive buffer. And if we subtract this value, from the receive buffer, that will give me the value of receive window size. So receive window with free space available is total receive buffer minus what is available. And what is available is last byte received minus last byte read. And these two value indicates what is the buffer has been occupied. And that means the difference is what is the allocated buffer available. So free space is total buffer minus what is being occupied. And that becomes the receive window value. And that's how things happen. Now, why does RWD changes dynamically? Because application could be reading data dynamically. So as and when last byte read increases, this value decreases, so RWD increases. Or when you receive more data from the sender, last byte receipt would increase, and because it would increase, this difference would increase, so receive buffer minus would decrease. So as and when you get data from the sender, RWD would decrease. As and when application reads the data, this value would increase, and this you can see from this equation there. Similarly, how does sender maintain this information? Remember, we had a look at sender as a buffer, a sliding window, which is what is the current byte sent and what is the ACK received. So I am here sent, I am here received. So send minus the last ACK received. That indicates data in the pipeline. And the data in the pipeline must be less than equal to receive window size given by the receiver. So last byte sent is what the side has sent. Last byte ACKed is what the other side has acknowledged. And this sliding window, the difference of these two has to be less than the receive window size because this indicates how much data could be sent by the sender in the pipeline. Now we might have an issue there. Look at, let's say, application is too slow to read, and application does not read any data, and sender keep on sending. And some point in time, so sender keep on sending, the sender receive buffer will become full, and there would be no free value, free byte left in the receive buffer. So if you look at the diagram, we can look at if sender keep on sending, the receive buffer keep on moving, and at this point in time, whole buffer is filled with the data sent by the sender, and application hasn't read it, so free buffer space becomes 0, and because sender has sent the data, client response says my CD buffer is 0. And when that happens, after a while, when application reads data, because receiver is responding only to messages received from the sender. The data and receiver is not informing. So how would sender know that receive buffer at the receiver has become full? Because receiver responds to only event coming from the sender. Sender sent too much data, receive buffer became full. It responded with RWD value is equal to 0. And after that, application can't send, sender can't send the data because RW1 is 0. Now, even though application reads the data, buffer becomes full, receiver does not respond because there is no event coming from the sender. So how do you resolve this particular case when RW becomes 0? And this significantly impacts the application and transmission performance. So what sender does is, whenever it receives RW value is equal to 0, it periodically sends 1 byte of data. This is called probing. It knows that this 1 byte of data is going to be ignored because receive buffer is full. But whenever receive buffer becomes empty at some space, receiver is going to send data. So sender will keep sending periodically 1 byte of data. And since you're sending only 1 byte, we're not really wasting any network bandwidth per se. And receiver would send RW to 0. But whenever application reads the data, and that means whenever buffer becomes empty, then that value would become non-zero and will respond. So periodically probing to too many application is too slow compared to sender link. And I've seen this problem sometimes. In that happens because sender keep on sending data and receiver application too slow. Is great. To another to process and zero, and after a number of retries, when sender has sent probe messages, and still get RW is equal to 0. So the receiver controlling the sender, how much data can be sent by the sender. At the time of connection setup, receiver receive whenever sender sends data, it put the data in receive buffer and free buffer space becomes less, and it indicates to the sender what is my current free space. Now, whenever the application needs the but does not from sender because it was sender only receive buffer becomes equal to 0 data. How does sender and the mechanism is what is called
Voice
promises
breaking.
by making thank you. I think the network issue now it is okay. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, sir. Now it's clear.
Yeah, there was some issue. Sorry for that. So let me recap. Flow control is controlling of the rate at which sender consent. And potential issue is when receive window becomes 0, how does sender know that application read the data and sender does send a probe message with 1 byte of data, and whenever sender receiver space becomes free, it responds back and then it sends the actual data. And that basically is flow control. Another error control mechanism that TCP handles is called congestion control. Congestion occurs in the network and primarily because there are too many senders sending too much data, and intermediate router buffers became full, and buffers became full, they end up dropping data, and then sender would retransmit again, sends more data, buffer is still full, and causes more congestion. So congestion is when underlying networks in the routers in the network has no buffer, they lose packets, or packets are too much into the queue, router is transmitting, but there's too much data into the queue, and queuing really occurs. And sender is not willing to wait that long, it times out and does retransmit, and retransmission again causes more load on the router and further slows down. So the only solution is the sender has to slow down sending because routers in the network cannot handle it. So sender has to throttle, it has to slow down. How do we slow down? Typically what happens is we only look at symptoms of the congestion, not the causes. How does sender know? It only knows that times out has occurred. I didn't get an ACK. That means there must be an issue. Let me slow down. And it knows that the real problem is other sender are sending too much data and I have no control over it. So all it does is slow down by itself. And if every sender behaves same way, we're trying to control and senders can't communicate with each other. So look at the basic theory of congestion, and then we'll look at how does congestion occurs in TCP. And there's one of the lab experiment which you do, experiment number 4, that indicates, look at the congestion control and the CWND window. So probably take the cases of 2 senders, 2 receivers. We assume only 1 router, and then we look at, like we started with ideal case. In the case of Level Data Transfer Protocol 1.0, we'll start with the same case, that routers has an infinite buffer, never loses the packet. Then we look at the case router has finite buffer, which is realistic, and then either it can cause delays or it can lose packets. And we look at those cases, and that way to understand why does congestion occur. There could be other reasons as well. One link could cause congestion at the previous link, and that may also cause issues. So we'll look at those cases. So cause of congestion and the cost of congestion. And primary cause of congestion is intermediate router storing too much data, not able to transmit. So let us look at, I have 2 senders, host A and host B, sending data to 2 respective servers, and assume each one has the bandwidth of R, and this router bandwidth is again R, and they're sending data. If both devices A and B sending data at as much as possible, and router being fair, and if my outgoing link capacity is R, that means each sender can send data at the rate of R by 2. It cannot send more than R by 2 because this link would be choked, and only then data would be delivered. Now look at the case, what happens when data sends more, and what does router do? What happens to the router buffers if sender sends too much data? So the network bandwidth, so one of the receiver, they can only receive at the rate of R by 2, not more, because of the router buffer. Sender can only send at the rate of lambda n, which is R by 2. After that, they can't even send because router won't even accept the packet. And even if they send at more, the delivery to the other end would still be R by 2 because this link is equally shared between the 2 routers. But if sender sends more at the rate, the delay would occur here. Yes, please. Any questions? If no, let me proceed. So let's look at the first case, what really happens, and we say the outgoing link is R, and when sender sends more, what could really happen? Because if one sender sends more, it will too much buffer in the queue and will cause delays. And then, as we said, that if transmission rate happens to be at the same rate, which is random at the rate of which it transmits, you probably have an infinite delay. That's the queuing theory. Now, the theory is not part of a chapter, so I will not go into those details. But those who are interested, I would suggest read the chapter 1 of the book. That's where it explained that if your sender transmission rate approaches the router exit transmission rate, you will have an infinite queuing. So we'll look at those parts. But typically congestion occurs because sender is sending higher rate, and cost is packets get large delay and application performance basically suffers. Now we look at that router as a finite buffer. Finite buffer means if it gets more data, it's going to drop, and if it's going to drop, then sender has to retransmit. And there's going to be packet loss that occurs. So we look at those, and again we assume 2 senders A and B, respective 2 receivers, servers C and D, and this outgoing link is still capacity R. That means if link being shared, router is trying to be fair to all, each host A and B can send only R by 2, and so lambda n at the rate they can send. And we look at lambda n prime, including the retransmitted data by transport layer. So lambda n is the rate of the application sending, and lambda n prime is including retransmission. So lambda prime, lambda dash n can be more than lambda n because it's the data sent by application. Application not doing a retransmit, it is the transporter that doing a retransmit, and that could be more. So first we start with a very perfect case, which in theory does not happen. We assume that sender knows that router has a buffer available, and it sends data only when router has a buffer. In theory, how does it figure out? practically next to impossible. But to understand congestion, first we assume somehow the sender knows that there's a buffer available, and only then it sends the data. It sends the first packet, it maintains a copy of the buffer, router keeps into the buffer. When data goes, then it removes from the buffer, and then it. Now, because both this link capacity R is shared by between two users, two hosts, so each one can send at the most of R by 2. And because each sender knows if the buffer available or not, there will be no packet loss, and each can send maximum of R by 2, and what corresponding side would receive, a lambda out with this fellow would receive server would be R by 2 and no more. This is the idealistic case, but in real life does not happen. Let's assume next case that we know buffers are limited and packet might be lost, and somehow the sender has a peeping window can figure out is the packet lost or packet not lost. Packet could be lost because others had sent too many data and then it can drop the packet. Or is sending a packet, my packet is dropped or not. So sender has some idea whether packet is dropped or not, and it does not retransmit if packet has been not dropped. It only retransmits when packet has been dropped. So if packet is dropped, then only retransmits, otherwise it does not drop. And that again means now because it is waiting to look at, it knows it can, sender can send even lambda dash in because it's retransmitting if packet is dropped. So lambda dash in, application rate is lambda in, this rate is lambda dash in, and if it reaches R by 2, per queuing theory, it will cause larger delay, but receiver can receive only R by 2 because this link R capacity R is shared between these two servers, two receivers. So they cannot receive more than R by 2, but because of buffering, this lambda dash n would be less than R by 2 because of retransmission. And that is what would happen. Now we can look at typically what happens. Why congestion occurs? Because router has limited buffer and it drops the packet. If it gets more packet, it drops the buffer, and cost is due to retransmission, and my effective throughput basically decreases. Now we look at another case that sender cannot know whether packet is lost or not. It has no peeping window. It maintains a timer, and if it maintains a timer and timer times out, it does retransmit. So sender sends one packet, it keeps a copy in the buffer, and there's a buffer there. It sends the packet which goes, but sender sees a timeout occurs and send the packet. So receiver receives two packets, and we are wasting network bandwidth. So cost of congestion is premature timeout, and because premature timeout, we are wasting network bandwidth, and we basically effective throughput get decreased. If sender knew it is duplicate or router knew duplicate, it wouldn't send it. At least effective throughput could be less, could be R by 2, rather because what happens in this case, if receiver receives duplicate packet, it is going to discard the duplicate packet. And so effective throughput of receiver becomes less than R by 2, not R by 2. If router could have had a duplicate packet, but router never looks at the transport layer packet, it only looks at the IP layer, it has no clue whether retransmitted packet or not, and in that sense, my effective throughput decreases. Other possibility, this is what happens in real life. So far, we looked at idealistic cases. Now consider you have A, B, C, and D. A is sending data to C, B is sending data to D, and so on and so forth, and there are 4 routers. And each router output link is R. Each of this link output link is R. Now consider that A is sending to C and D is sending to B. So A is sending to D, which you can see by the red color. D is sending to B, which is in with blue color. And this R1 output link is R. Now because D can send a higher rate, but because of this link, this router cannot send more than R. The host D can send at the much higher rate, but D link capacity is R, it cannot send more than R. Similarly, host A can send at the much higher rate, but R1 cannot send more than R. So in the fair case, B would get R by 2, and R by 2 go to R2, and C will also get R by 2. But in realistically, look what happens. We have 4 senders, we have 2 overlap paths, because this link is overlap between A to B, A to C, and D to B. Now, as and when both these hosts increases, now A sends his lambda increase, it sends lot more packets. So R1 buffer would be filled by most of the red packets from the host A. And since the router 4, R4, it is delimited by sending rate R, it can send only rate of R, where A could be sending a lot more. So router R1 would basically a lot of packets coming from sender A, and it will rarely get packets from R4, which is coming from host D. So blue color packet would basically be dropped because it's not even there. And that means the C won't receive a packet. So what happens? Congestion occurs here, but it impacts my performance of router R4 and host D. Host D will time out and will keep retransmitting, even though this router R4 is fine, but because R1 is having congestion issue, it impacts R4. So congestion propagates back till the end and queue builds up. As you might have seen, if these are the different road crossings, if there is an accident at this road crossing and traffic keeps coming, slowly all the previous crossings, traffic builds up and congestion happens. Same way, if congestion occurs at one point, all the previous router, congestion would occur in the same way. So how do we deal with congestions? There are 2 approaches. One is called end-to-end congestion and one is called network assisted congestion. End-to-end means network simply receives the packet. It does not inform sender or the receiver saying, I'm congested and I'm dropping the packet. The sender figures out by doing a timeout that packet is lost, and because packet is lost, network is congested, let me not send it. And this is the end-to-end congestion control, which is basically used by TCP. There are other transport protocols, other network protocols, which is called network assisted. That means network does inform the sender either directly or indirectly saying, I'm congested. And in that sense, somehow sender comes to know and slows down. So there are 2 approaches. One is end-to-end. That means only the sender and the receiver, by their own communications, they figure out whether there is a congestion in the network or not. And this mostly happens when sender runs a timer, does not get the ACK in time, and because it does not get the ACK in time, it times out, retransmits, it knows network is congested. And this is the approach taken by TCP. There are other protocols like ATM, IBM's SNA, and DECnet. Now mostly use only TCP, nothing else. But ATM is being used at the link layer, at the ISP layer. They do use ATM protocol. ATM is not our bank ATM call anytime money. It is asynchronous transfer mode. And we'll study that congestion, network assisted congestion, in our next lecture. So either network gives me the error, and there are ways and means how network can indicate that we study next. But TCP makes use of end-to-end congestion control. That basically means the sender would detect there is a congestion and basically slows down. And as we discussed last class, how does sender determine the sender rate? If times out loses a segment, it knows that network is congested, so it should slow down. Now question is, how much to slow down? Should it become half? Should it become 1/3 current rate? Should it make it 0? What is the logic it should use to slow down? Other approach is, we've seen that it does fast retransmit. Let's say some momentary there were congestion, but network recovered, so it lost some packet. Let's say sender sent 5 packets, packet 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and packet number 2 or segment number 2 is lost because there was congestion at that point in time. But after that, it recovered and segment number 3, 4, 5 were delivered. Now because 3, 4, 5 were delivered to receiver and TCP makes use of cumulative ACK, it will still send ACK corresponding to segment 1. Now sender would get 3x, 1 for segment number 3, but ACK will indicate ACK for segment 1. Segment number 4 still get the ACK for segment 1. Segment 5 still get the ACK for segment 1. When you get 3 duplicate ACKs corresponding to segment 1, then sender knows that I'm getting 3 duplicate ACKs. That means there is some problem in the network. And because my ACKs are for, I'm getting an ACK for segment 2, that means my segment 2 is lost. So let me not wait for the timeout. Let me retransmit it right away, because 3 duplicate ACK means segment 2 is lost, and it retransmits. So retransmit, but at what rate? It still reduce, but at what rate? And then since I'm getting an ACK, can I increase my rate? I may reduce a lot earlier. And so each time I get duplicate ACKs, this implies network has recovered, but still not fully earlier stages. So I can increase, but I should increase that is some rate which should not congest the network again. Because if I send too much, it may get congested again, and that does not happen. So we will look at how does TCP sender determines the congestion or what is the bandwidth available in the network, and that is what is called bandwidth probing. It constantly keeps looking at or what is called equivalent to bandwidth probing. There is no explicit message that is sent by the network, or there is a no probe message that is sent by the sender to know, hey, network, tell me what's the bandwidth now. No, there is no such message. But by looking at the duplicate ACKs, by looking at the timeout it has occurred, using those things, it somehow determines that this is the current state of the network, and that is what is logical probing it figures out. So essentially, whenever congestion occurs, job is to slow down, back off, and whenever congestion releases, increase the rate, identify the bandwidth, do my probing process. So it is a probing process and not the probe messages, and that's the difference we need to see between the mechanism used by TCP. So typically, TCP congestion control algorithm, as was proposed much earlier, it was proposed by Van Jacobson, is also called Jacobson congestion control. So TCP congestion has 3 phases. One is called slow start, other is called congestion avoidance, and third is called fast recovery. Let us look at a slow start. When the connection starts, it does not know what is the network capacity. It has absolutely no idea is network congested or free or something. So it starts slow, means it sends only one segment. It sends only one segment, and when it gets the ACK, no timeout occurs. Then it derives, oh, I got the ACK within my time. That means network is fine. I can increase my rate, and it doubles. It sent one segment before, now it sent 2 segments. It sent 2 segments, it got ACK of both these 2 segments. If it gets ACK of both these 2 segments, then sender says, wow, the network is still fine, there's no packet loss, I'm getting both the ACKs. That means network has enough capacity. It doubles and then sends 4 segments. And if you get all the 4 ACKs, it will send 8 segments and so on. So initially it starts with 1. Each time it gets the ACK for all it sent, it keeps doubling it, and this is how it knows, because network has a capacity and keeps sending. But it knows that at some point in time, if I keep doubling, network is going to face problem. So I can double up to a point, but if I keep doubling forever, I'm certainly going to cause an issue. Let's say I double till about 1000 and network congestion occurred at 1100, and then 1000 I double to 2000, all my 900 packets would be lost. And I'm simply wasting too much time. So at some point in time, sender should take a cautious approach. It should keep some kind of a threshold, make some guess the previous experience, some configuration. Look, I'll keep on doubling till that point in time. And after that, I'll suspect that I might cause congestion. So rather than doubling, I'll increase slowly. And that is when the congestion avoidance phase starts. For up to certain limit, which is called threshold limit, it keeps doubling in number of segments it can send. And once it reaches that segment, it slows down, does not doubles. If it gets all the X, it increases by only one segment because it fears network might face an issue, get congested because there's not infinite capacity. So let me not load it. And it slowly increases, and that is when we call TCP has entered congestion avoidance phase. Now what happens? Sender increases transmission rate slowly, one at a time, keep checking because it gets the act, it knows network is working fine, I increase by one, send it again, and this is what is called network probing process. So assume that at this rate, I am sending it, keeps increasing slowly, I get all the X, so this is the time I send some number of, based on my congestion window or my transmission window, I send packets, I get the X, I increase by one, I send again, I get the X. Some point in time, network is going to get congested. And network is going to get congested, I may lose some packets. I lose some X. Network could be CVD congested, that means I won't get any X at all. A network is mildly congested, then I will get some duplicate X, but not all. And at that time, we decide, oh, network is congested, let me slow down. And what sender does, whatever its current congestion window was, or the sliding window was, it simply makes it half. And then slowly starts sending it again. Because it makes it half, it gets all the X. So if network was mildly congested, just because it slows down the rate, it goes again, keeps increasing by one. Each time it gets all the X, it increases the window by one. And again, some point in time, with this increase, network is going to get congested because there's no network capacity. And the moment it gets congested, it again makes it half and slowly increase. And you see this is how this sender behaves. And you see this more like look like a sawtooth which we use to cut wood. Tooth pins and you keep crossing and then you cut the wood. So it's also known as CTP called sawtooth behavior. So this approach is called additive increase because every time I get an act, I increase my window size by one. So I'm adding my window size, increasing by adding the numbers by adding by one. So it is additive increase. Every time I get the act, I'm increasing my window size by one by adding value one, fixed increase, hence it is called additive increase. But once a congestion occurs, I make my congestion window by half. I'm dividing, I'm not decreasing by fixed value, I'm simply multiplying by half. So I'm decreasing by a factor of 2, and that is what I'm doing. So whenever I'm increasing linearly by adding fixed number, which is 1, and whenever congestion occurs, I'm decreasing by half or by a factor of 2. That means my decrease is multiplicative because I'm decreasing by half. By factor of 2, I'm decreasing, but my increase is additive linear. So this congestion avoidance phase is also called AIMD, which is additive increase, multiplicative decrease. Additive increase means when I get all the X, I increase my congestion window by 1. I get duplicate tags or get error, I decrease by half. And since I'm decreasing by a factor, it becomes multiplicative decrease. And this results in sawtooth behavior. It drops suddenly, increases linearly, drops suddenly, increases linearly. And that is the second phase called congestion control. Now, different TCP implementations could behave differently. Now we have two cases. One is that the network is too congested, all the packets were lost, I didn't get an ACK, timeout occurs. Other is I got duplicate tags, that means network is mildly congested because I'm getting some duplicate tags. And TCP can treat the two differently. If it loses all the packets, that means timeout occurs, it did not get any ACK, means either the X are lost or all the packets are lost, it cannot know. That means it assumes network is completely congested. It starts with congestion window of one MSS, one segment size, the link size. But if it receives 3 duplicate ACKs, that implies to it that there is some congestion which is recovered. So let me not take a severe action of setting my current congestion window to 1, but make it half and then do that. And there are different implementations. One is called Reno, one is called Tahoe. There are basically two places in California. Reno is also called mini Las Vegas. Las Vegas is famous for gambling, number of gaming studios, slot machines, and all that. Same is true for Reno. It is besides a beautiful lake called Tahoe. And Lake Tahoe is the most clean water of any lake. And so maybe there are conference there to decide, and at that time they implemented. So TCP Reno and TCP Tahoe, there are two implementations. And basically what we look at is TCP Tahoe is, even if it's a packet loss, or even if it is a duplicate ACK, it always starts with 1. But in TCP Reno, if it duplicate ACK, it makes it half, but timeout, it makes it 1, and that's how the two implementations would appear. So if we look at, I start with congestion window of 1, I get the ACK, congestion window made it 2, I get both the ACKs, congestion window becomes 4, I get all the 4 ACKs, it becomes 8, so I'm doubling it. So it becomes like an exponential curve. So even though the name is slow start, it increases kind of exponentially, and this is a slow start phase. Let's say threshold happens to be 8 segment. So assume that after 8, network might be congested. So even after that, if I get all the X, I increase by 1. So congestion window becomes 9, it becomes 10, 11, 12, and so on and so forth. At 12, a timeout occurs, or a packet loss occurs. So two possibilities, that some packet got lost, and that means I got a duplicate ACK, so that indicates a congestion. If it is Tahoe implementation, it will always start with 1. If it's Reno implementation, which is improved performance, it will set it half, and then again goes to congestion avoidance phase. And this is what is called, because I make it half, and because my duplicates are coming, I quickly recover, and that is what is called fast recovery phase. So you can look at the demo, things are there, and this exercise is there, it's interactive exercises. Job is to identify in this which is the congestion avoidance phase, which is the fast recovery, and which is the slow start. So if we look at, in this case, it keeps on doubling, and my threshold was 8. So it keeps on, threshold was 8, it keeps on till 8, then increases linearly. At this point in time, my congestion window becomes 1. That means timeout occurs as severe congestion. And whenever congestion occurs, I set my threshold to half of current congestion window. So it was 15, I set it to 7.5 and start. So again a slow start, 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, and then again timeout occurs. When timeout occurs, I start with 1. And my congestion, my threshold becomes 4 because congestion becomes 4. So 1 to 2 is a slow start, and this 2 to this is a congestion avoidance. At this point in time, you again have timeout, and this occurs. And now again 1, 2, 4, 8, and here, because I'm making it my half, that means it was not a timeout. I got 3 duplicate ACKs, I recovered, and then proceed with the half. So this is my slow start phase. This linear growth is congestion avoidance phase, and this is my fast recovery because of duplicate ACKs. And you might have seen this is a state transition diagram you can look at, but if you look at the lab experiment, I'll just show you one capture from the lab. Start with value of 1, it keeps on doubling to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 16, 16 to 32, and the congestion window was set to 50. The moment 50 occurs, you got some duplicate X, and your threshold from 50 becomes 25. And 25 again, the till 25, you keep doubling it. So this is slow start phase. Now I made my threshold to half of 50, which is 25. And from, because my timeout occurred, I start with 1 again, 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 16. And at 25, I basically keep increasing linearly and it goes. And so this red color you can see, this is a sawtooth behavior. And this is the way, so when you have the experiment, look at the congestion, you primarily need to define what is the slow start phase and which is the congestion. So when you see a linear growth, this is the congestion avoidance phase. When it drops back to 1, this is the timeout, implies severe congestion. But when I drop to half and then increase linearly, this is my first recovery phase because I quickly recovered. I got duplicate X, I recovered quickly, and that means, so when you look at the congestion control TCP experiment number 4, you need to be able to interpret and explain what is happening. You also see there are 3 connections, which basically implies fairness, is TCP being fair, and that we see in the next lecture. So next lecture we'll look at network assisted congestion control, primarily ATM protocol, and how does my TCP fairness works. If any questions, please feel free to ask, otherwise we are done for today. But again, please go through, read the book, understand that by reading a lecture, I will be running fast, it will take a time to catch up. So unless you read the book, understand, you will not be able to fully follow. And if you have a question, please do send me a question and I'll be happy to answer. Thank you. If any question, please ask, otherwise I can drop.